Yes. Hello, my dear students. Welcome to the MEMONEET. I'm Ratikyan, presently working as a SME in the MEMONEET. So, congratulations to all the students who performed well in 2024 NEET. And no worries, if you have not performed well, 2025 NEET is anyhow there, and the MEMONEET team is with you all. We're definitely going to support you, and together we are definitely going to crack the NEET exam. Okay. So in today's video, we will be discussing about the very first chapter, that is the living world. So what do you mean by living world? And what are the basic topics that we need to cover or we need to study in the living world? So we normally have three topics which need to be covered in the living world. So the first one is the diversity part, and the second one is the classification part, and the third one is the taxonomical category. Every year we will be having around 1 to 2 questions asked from this living world chapter. So major of the questions will be asked from the classification part or taxonomical category part. Okay. So without delaying, let us move to the topic. See, when I'm talking about the diversity or biological diversity, we normally see varieties of plants, animals, birds. Even there are some organisms that cannot be seen through our naked eye, such as microorganisms, right? So these all organisms or these all living organisms, they make a specific species. So till now, they have mentioned that around 1.7 to around 1.8 millions of species have been identified. So 1.7 to 1.8 millions of species have been identified till now. Okay. And together, these all living organisms together, they make biodiversity. So when I'm talking about the biodiversity, always remember. So biodiversity is nothing but, so it is the number as well as types of the living organisms which is present in the earth. So we normally call it as biodiversity. So as I said, there are variety of living organisms, and each animals, plants, or each organisms, they have their own name in the specific area or specific locality. So when you go from one locality to the other locality, the name of these organisms also get differ. So that creates a kind of confusion to all the biologists or all the students who are actually studying sciences. So just to avoid this confusion, there has to be a proper systematic way of naming this organism in such a way that that name has to be followed universally everywhere, and all the biologists should accept that name. So how do you name them? Obviously in a very systematic manner. So the systematic manner of naming the living organism or scientifically naming the living organism is actually called as nomenclature. Yeah. So nomenclature is actually systematically, we are normally naming the living organism is actually called as nomenclature. So what are the organizations which are going to take care of this nomenclature? So we normally have two organizations which is going to take care of the nomenclature part. And this is very important. So for plants, we have the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. So that is going to, maintain all the records as well as the procedure to nomenclate the plant. And we, for the animals, we have International Code of Zoological Nomenclature. So these two agencies or these two organizations will ensure that each organisms have only one name. So despite of any organisms, wherever the organism might be present, but the organism's information and the name should be one. So so these organizations are going to ensure this whole thing. Okay. So how do exactly the naming goes on? Like how do the nomenclature process goes on? So they normally follow two components. So what are the two components then? So one is the name should consist the generic thing or the genus, and the another one is the specific epithet, that is nothing but the species name. Okay. So in a quick detail, what do you mean by genus and species name? So genus are nothing but you're actually, you're actually classifying the organisms based on their morphological character. So you're actually bringing together the organisms based on their similar characters kind of thing. So when it is about, when you're talking about the species, it is about identifying or classifying the organisms based on one or individual characteristics. Okay, so that is called as species. So therefore, the system of providing the naming by using these two components are actually called as binomial nomenclature. So here binomial is nothing but two. So that is nomenclature is naming. So we are normally using two components to give a naming to a specific organisms. Hence it is called as binomial nomenclature. And binomial nomenclature, that is the naming system, was actually given by the Carolus Linnaeus. He is a biologist who gave this naming system. So how do we actually write? How do we write, or how do exactly it works? So we'll see by taking an example of a mango here. Okay. So when I'm talking about the mango here, you have to know like the scientific name of mango is Mangifera indica. So here Mangifera and indica are the two different words. So Mangifera normally refers to the genus, okay? Whereas the indica normally refers to the species or the specific epithet. So therefore, here we are normally using the genus as well as the species. So hence we can call it as it has been binomially named. So there are specific rules that we normally follow while naming, while writing the nomenclature or while writing the scientific name. So basically we have four rules, one, two, three, and the four set of rules that we normally follow while writing the nomenclature. Okay. So what are these rules or the universal rules of nomenclature? So the first rule is the biological name are normally origin or they are actually derived from the Latin. Okay, irrespective of their origin. It's irrespective of its origin or their origin is means it can be the organisms can be found anywhere or the origin might be from anywhere. But the name has to be always written or it should always be derived from the Latin word itself. This is the very first rule. And while writing, it has to be in italics. So when you are writing that in italics, that means you are actually it indicates that the name is actually origin from the or the name is actually derived from the Latin word. The second thing is the first word, that is the biological name. The very first word represents the genus, and the second word normally represents the specific epithet or the species. For example, Mangifera indica. Mangifera indica. So here Mangifera represents the genus, whereas the indica represents the specific epithet or the species name. So whenever you are writing a biological name, the very first word of the biological name should represent the genus, and the the second word should represent the species name. The third point is when you are both the words of the biological name, that is when you are writing the biological name, okay, it has to be separately underlined. For example, here you can see that I have underlined separately. That is, sorry, yeah, I have underlined it separately. I have written Mangifera as well as Indica, and I have underlined it separately. Okay. Or else when you are typing or when you are printing, it has to be in a italics form. So italics form, it indicates that their origin is from the Latin. So clear? Okay. So the fourth very important point and the last point is, see, while you are writing a biological name, the very first letter should start with a capital. For example, here I have written the capital word, right? And the next word, starting letter should start with the small letter. So here the capital letter indicates it is the genus. So genus normally it should start with the capital letter. While the specific epithet, that is the species name, should always start with the small letter. You're getting? So genus name should always start with the capital letter, whereas the species name should always start with the small letter. Uh, so this is actually the very four important rules which normally we use or the universal rules for nomenclature. Clear? So when the name of the biological name, at the end of the biological name, you can actually write the author or the one who has described this biological name of the organisms. For example, uh, you have here this Magnifera indica Lin, right? So Magnifera indica, we know it is a biological name. The first one represents the genus and the second one represents the species name. So Lin is nothing but it indicates that these species, okay, was actually first described by the Linnaeus. So therefore, after the end of the species name, that is at the end of your biological name, you are going to add the scientist name. So this is how you need to, how normally we give credit to the scientist or biologist who has described or discovered the individual species. So I hope you are clear with the universal rules of nomenclature. So basically, based on this universal rules of nomenclature, many questions can be asked in the NEET, okay? So since there are many living organisms, again, it becomes very impossible to name them separately. So that's why what happens is if you bring them together and then divide them based on the based on the characteristics or something. That means when you classify them, okay, based on their morphological characteristics or internal characteristics and all. So that is going to help the individual or help the biologist to study the particular organism in a very detailed way. So therefore, classification is nothing but it is a process by which anything is being grouped into the convenient category based on some easily observing characters. So by seeing some easily observing characters, we normally place them separately. For example, here you can see when I'm talking about the cat as well as the dog, they are animals, okay? So here we have the wheat plant and we have the rice. So I'm actually classifying them into two different categories. How? Based on their morphological appearance. So now I can classify them as animals and these as plants. So this will make me very easy to understand and study the individual organisms. So therefore, classification is a process by which anything is grouped into the convenient category based on some easily observing characteristics. Clear? So how the way, the scientific way you are actually categorizing these organisms, okay? You are categorizing these organisms based on their some morphological characteristics and all, right? So it is actually called as taxa. So based on the characteristics, when you actually categorize all the living organisms, that means when based on their characteristics, if you classify the living organisms, can actually be classified into different taxa or different groups, the way I have classified here. So this process of classification is actually called as taxonomy. So you're clear with the topic or concept called taxonomy, right? So if you're clear with the topic called taxonomy, please give thumbs up in the message box. See, what are the things that you will be considering while you are classifying them or when you are characterizing them? So one thing is the external characters, and the second thing is the internal characters. So external characters, internal characters, along with this, the structure of the cells and even the developmental process and even the ecological information of the organisms, they are very essential and it forms a basis for all the modern taxonomical study. So these are the very basic way how we can one study the modern taxonomy. Okay. Hence, characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature, they are the process for the basis to the taxonomy. I hope you understand. I hope you understood what I am trying to say. So before what happened is human beings were they never ever gave importance to study or to know the different kinds of organisms, the diversity, and even the relationship between them. So, but now during the modern science, modern technology, and all, human beings are very much interested to know more detail about different kinds of organisms and their diversity, and also the relationship among them. So the subject or the branch which normally deals with this study is referred to as systematics. Okay. So the word systematic has actually been derived from the Latin word which means that systema. which means the systematic arrangement of the organisms. So while you are studying, you are actually systematically arranging the organisms. So hence hence the word is actually called as systema. So we know that Carolus Linnaeus is the one who actually proposed this binomial nomenclature. So he published his work, right? So he gave the title for his publication as Systemae Naturae. So this is again very important point. Please note down. So anyhow, you can note down the points because these lines are directly from the NCERT textbook. So no need to worry. You'll get them. And even you'll get even the notes form also in the MEMONEET app. So you can also download those notes in the MEMONEET app, and you'll get the short form and a very described, notes and all. So the scope of the systematic was later enlarged to include the identification, nomenclature, as well as the classification part. So in the systematic, basically we are dealing with the evolutionary relationship between the living organisms also. Okay. So yeah, our very last concept is the taxonomical classification. See, classification is not a very single step procedure. It involves different hierarchy of steps in which each steps it normally represents the different rank or different category. Since the category is actually a part of overall taxonomical arrangement, so it is called as the taxonomical category. You are getting. So since the category is actually a part of all over the taxonomical arrangement, it is called as the taxonomic category, and all categories together they normally constituents the taxonomical hierarchy. So all organisms, like from higher hierarchy to the lower hierarchy. So for example, higher hierarchy will be like those in the plants and animal kingdom will be having the species at the lowest category. So that means, so this is the highest category, kingdom will be the highest category, and the species will be the lowest category. So from here it is going to go. So from descending order to ascending order. Then what exactly the species is? Like we'll go from the descending order to the ascending order. Okay. So what exactly the species is? That is from lower category to the higher category. Species, which means it is actually a taxonomical study, which normally consists of the group of individual organisms with fundamental similarities as a species. That means like they normally consist of a group of individual organisms having same similarities or exact similarities, and that is going to make them different from any other organisms, that one should be able to distinguish, okay, one species from the other, which are very closely related species. For example, in the classroom you have both boys and girls, right? So both boys and girls are the students itself, but what is making them to separate individually based on their morphological characteristics? Like you can easily differentiate who is the boy and who is the girl. So this is actually called as species. For example, we have taken here four things. One is Mangifera indica, then the Solanium tuberosum, then the Panthera leo, then Homo sapiens. So here, what is making them? So these all four are genus, and these are species like indica, tuberosum, leo, sapiens, right? So these four are actually represent species. So you can easily identify them, or easily you can separate. Like Mangifera indica, mango, you can easily identify it belongs to mango. The potato can be easily identified. Leo is again a species, can be easily identified. And the sapiens, again, it can be easily identified. So by their morphological characteristics, we can easily identify them individually. So that is nothing but species, okay? So each genus, so for example, each individual species, for example, Leo. So you have Panthera Leo, Panthera tigris. So each species can have or else each genus can have more than one species. For example, Panthera is a genus here. Okay, it can have more than one species, such as Leo or tigris and all. But the species will be never having more than one genus. You are getting the point? So genus can have more than one specific epithet representing the different organisms, but the species will be never having more than one genus. This is the very important point that you should remember or memorize. Okay. The second one is the genus. So when I'm talking about the genus normally compresses a group of related species. As I said, the example of the classroom. So now you can actually consider the entire classroom, like boys, girls, as one class, one category. Okay. So based on the somewhat similar characteristics. So therefore, genus compresses a group of related species which has more characters in common in compared to the species of other genera. Clear? So we can say that the genera or genus are aggregates of closely related species. So if the species are closely related, we can bring them in one specific group. You're getting, so if somewhat you can feel it very similar. For example, I'll go with the example of this thing, that is Panthera leo, then we have Panthera pardus, and we have Panthera tigris. Okay, so you can see it has different species but same genus. So why we are bringing it together? Because of the several common features. For example, they're carnivorous, they're fresh eating, and they're very similar to each other. Therefore, we bring them together in the Panthera. In the same way, we have bought the potato and brinjal. You can see morphologically it might be different, but based on some of the similar characteristics, okay, we are actually bringing them together in one genus, that is Solanum. Clear? So this is called as genus. So when I'm talking about the family thing, family has a group of related genera with still less number of similarities. So when you move from the lower hierarchy to the higher hierarchy, right? So there the classification becomes very less way. That means, see, from when I'm talking about the family, here the group of related genus will still be having the less number of similarities as compared to the genus. Okay. And the species. For example, now when I was talking about the lion, leopard, tiger, and all, you could easily compare them. Okay, it has somewhat similarities. But when you go to the higher hierarchy or higher category, what happens is similarities become even lesser. For example, you can see the example of the animal here. You have Panthera compressing lion, tiger, leopard is put along with the genus, which they're put along with it together. Okay. So Felix is a cat which is in the family Felidae. Similarly, if you observe, so these all things together they're put in one family. Okay. So for example, you can in the plant you can also see this like Solanum, Pitine, and Datura. They are placed in the same family, that is Solanaceae. Okay. Even though morphologically somewhat they are different, only few characteristics can be matched. So even in like lion, tiger, and leopard belongs to the same genus. Okay, but what about the cat? So cat belongs to Felix. It's the genus, but still these both are brought together in the Felidae family. Okay, so even though the genus is different, Panthera is the genus. Okay, and here Felix is the genus for the cat. Even though the genus is different, but still they are bought in the same family. You are getting me? So therefore, this is how the family you are going to classify under the family. Similarly, if you observe the cat as well as dog, we can actually find some of the similar characteristics and some of the dissimilar characteristics. So they are actually separated into two different families respectively, such as Felidae and Canidae. But they are brought together in the same order. So how I'll explain you. See, when I'm talking about the order, we have to see early that the characteristics like species, then genus and family are based on the number of some of the similar characteristics. For example, so like when we start getting into the higher category, okay, so the arrangement of the assemblage of these families will exhibit a very few similar characteristics. That means the similar characteristics are less in number when compared to the genus, including the family and all. So plant family like Convolvulaceae as well as Solanaceae, they are included in one order, that is Polymosaceae. Okay. So mainly based on their floral characteristics. So whereas if I'm talking about the animal order, so we can see that carnivores, they includes a family like Felidae and Canidae. Felidae normally comes under what say like cat, lion, tiger and all, they comes under this, right? So whereas the dog and all, it normally comes under Canidae. So even though morphologically somewhat they are different, but still by considering very few characteristics, they are brought together. So these are the questions which can appear in the NEET and all. The next one is class. So this category includes somewhat related to the order. For example, order primates comprises normally monkeys, gorilla, gibbons. So they normally place under the class Mammalia, right? Along with other carnivore animals such as a tiger, cat, and dog. Even these are also placed under the class category. Okay. Even these are also placed under the class category. So class Mammalia has other orders also, but still they are placed under, like Mammalia will be having even many orders also, but still, they are placed under the specific class category. Then the next one is phylum or order. So classes, normally this class phylum, classes, they normally compresses the animals such as the phylum consists of fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds along with mammals. So they normally comes under the higher hierarchy. So these are called as phylum. So based on the very common features like whether the presence of notochord is present or not, and the presence of dorso-hollow neural system and all, so we normally categorize the living organisms under the specific phylum such as chordate and non-chordates. Okay. In case of plants, what we do is we normally categorize are assigned to the higher category. So they are normally called as divisions. So in plants and all, we will be considering as divisions. Whereas in animals, we will be classifying them based on presence or absence of notochord. So whether phylum chordata, phylum non-chordata kind of thing. So the last one is the last hierarchy and the highest class, this hierarchy. So that is the kingdom. So kingdom, basically we normally have two kingdoms. One is animals has been classified, Animalia kingdom is classification system for animal, and the kingdom Plantae is actually a classification system for various plant, and it compresses where all the plants from various division. So there are broad characteristics. That means all the animals comes under the kingdom Animalia and all the plants comes under the kingdom Plantae. Okay. Hence, the taxonomists have also developed some subcategories in this hierarchy to facilitate more sound and scientific placement of various taxa so that we can understand them in a better way. So this is one of the table where the table consists of the common names such as man, housefly, mango as well as the wheat. Okay, and they have given the biological names such as Homo sapiens, Musca domestica, then Mangifera indica, Triticum, Aestivum. So when coming to the genus, they have also mentioned the family, order, class, as well as phylum or division. So this chart you can once go through the chart so that in the exams they might ask you the MCQs or match the following kind of questions from this chart also. Okay. So just let me know if you have any doubts regarding the living word. Please comment in the box, and even we have a Telegram channel, so even you can uh, text your question or put your questions in the Telegram channel. and we will at any time, even at 2 a.m. also, if you put the question in the Telegram channel, we will reach out to you. So yes.